Hey everyone, welcome back to Low Budget Logistics, your logistics and supply chain explainer, where I use very cheap methods to explain some very deep concepts. Today, as you can tell, we're going to talk about it being everything's on fire all the time. I hope you like that. I spent a lot of time cutting that flame out. So today we're going to be talking about the supply chain and how it's built, because it's really interesting how it's built and why it's built that way. So, but you know that because you're in the supply chain, you understand that stuff. This is for somebody else that you can share with. So please share with a friend to understand, to explain why you're always pulling your hair out. All right, let's talk about the supply chain and how it's built. It is built for speed and efficiency. That's it. That's why it exists, is to get things moving quickly and to move them as efficiently as possible. That is the total end state to the existing global supply chain and even the domestic supply chain. Why is it that way? It's that way because things cost money. Logistics and the supply chain never brings in money unless you're a you're a company that moves stuff, or if you're a carrier, then of course, yeah, it brings in money. But if you're a retailer, it's just a thing that you have to do, right? It's a thing that costs money, and so because of that, because it costs money, you want to spend as little money as possible on that thing. So it's built for efficiency. And then the other thing is that if you're a company that has, let's say, seasonality or has some sort of trendiness to it, well, then you want your stuff fast. There's obviously slower ways of going. We've talked about a couple of them. Things that are not built necessarily for speed, that are built primarily for efficiency. And so those are the things. That's the reason why. Now, when you are so fast and so efficient, you become extremely rigid. And if things don't work out exactly as they're supposed to, well, then they break down. As you can tell here, things are breaking down. Enjoy my fun illustrations. So efficiency does not lend itself to resiliency. Those two things are very different, and to some extent they're diametrically opposed to one another. Specifically because if you're resilient, there's oftentimes a need for being redundant, and for having other options available to you that might cost you extra money. If you're being efficient, you don't want that. You don't want extra things. You're effectively putting all of your eggs in one basket, because it's extremely efficient to move all those eggs in one basket. It's less efficient to move in multiple baskets, right? It takes extra time, it takes extra labor, it takes extra work, it takes extra cost. You don't want to spend extra money in the supply chain because you want to spend that money on marketing or on, building a better product. And so again, supply chain is just a thing that you have to spend money on, so you want to spend as little as possible. So the global supply chain is built for efficiency. And you can see that all the way down to like infrastructure. So in the US, we primarily bring stuff or move volume out of Southeast Asia, right? China, Vietnam, Thailand, that sort of part of the world, and into the US. There's a big thing in between those two things called the Pacific Ocean. That obviously costs a lot of money to move across. Well, the closest port, the best place to come into, is actually the ports of LA and Long Beach, which are literally like right next to one another. They're in Southern California. So because of the way that things have been set up, we have moved a lot of volume into that area, into those two ports, and so they've gotten really big. And because they've gotten really big, they've gotten better at moving volume. They've gotten a lot better at it. So it's hyper efficient to move lots of stuff into those specific ports. Well, what happens if they stop, moving stuff? If they stop, processing that volume? Well, then you kind of get backlogs. And that's what happened in 2020, right? Globally, we all basically stopped working. Longshoremen stopped going to work. They stopped, offloading stuff. When that happened, you got a line of ocean ships with a bunch of volume and stuff on it, a lot of containers that just sat in line. And when that happened, well, those offloaders had to work longer to get that stuff actually physically pulled off of those ships, put onto the ground, and have truckers, pull them into the U.S. Well, again, people weren't working at the same rate, and then that caused some backup. Other things that happened in the global supply chain that made everything go on fire. The Ever Given got stuck in the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal is the best way to get anything out of India and the Indian subcontinents of India, Bangladesh, that part of the world. Typically will go through the Indian Ocean up through I forget what the sea is, but it'll go through the Suez Canal as it goes to either Europe or then on into the US. Well, when you can't get in through that, that canal, where are you going to go? Well, you have to then go around the entire continent of Africa, which adds time, it adds price, it makes things more difficult. Or the other option is that you just sit and you wait in line. Because this is the math that's being done in everyone's head is, well, it costs money to go around Africa, and it costs money to go, and it costs time to go around Africa, so maybe we'll just wait it out. It might be more worth, right? The bets that are being made are, hey, I think that the Ever Given is going to get removed out of that canal before before I could feasibly get around the coast of Africa. It's a gamble. So you can start to see that the supply chain internationally is extremely efficient, right? We are using the best lanes. We're moving as optimally as possible. We have put investments into places that move things faster because geography is it's something you can't change. But it lends itself to being extremely rigid and extremely unresilient. And a lot of places now are having to start to make this balance of efficiency and resiliency. And this is a thing that most C-suite individuals don't understand. It is well, why would I spend extra money on this potential outcome if it probably won't happen? Well, because you won't have stuff. In the instance that it actually does happen, then you won't have your stuff. And so we need another option. So typically, there are always breaking points. There's always reasons for doing things. There's a lot of ways to sort of wrap resiliency into efficiency, at least kind of at times. And there's always sort of an amount of guessing that you're going to have to do as a supply chain professional to say, hey, it's actually worth it to me to spend a little bit extra money because I know that I want to make sure that my stuff actually gets moved and that I have stuff to sell, as a retailer, as a business. There's reasons for having that resiliency. And typically it means just adding another provider. Generally you would do it a little bit before you'd actually have enough volume to make it sort of really worthwhile, because carriers are only really good up to certain volume points. And once you exceed that, then it's time to sort of get someone else to move that volume with you. So you might just do it a little bit earlier, or you might intentionally use ports that are not as sort of as good of an option, right? So on the West Coast, you could move into Portland, Oregon. You could move into Seattle, Tacoma. There's other places along the West Coast that you could move, or you could even move into the Gulf of Mexico, into the Port of Houston, and some of the other Gulf ports as well. You can't typically do as much volume into there because they have to actually go through the Panama Canal. So the ship sizes are a little bit smaller, but you can do it. And so that is a choice that you can make of trying to be a little bit ahead of the game as you start to see things becoming an issue. But resiliency and efficiency are always going to be in conflict. They're always going to be in competition with one another. And it's up to supply chain professionals to make that call and to say, to put forward a good reason to an executive of why it might be worth spending a little bit extra money, right? So if I was a salesperson and I was going to, spend money on leads, if they're really good leads, well, then it's worth that extra investment. It's worth that extra price. We supply chain people are not good at that, at making that sale, that pitch. But we need to be better at it. So you should be better because you're a supply chain professional. You're watching this, But all that being said, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed everything. I really hope you enjoyed that little guy up there. Like I said, I spent a lot of time on it. It's dumb. It's a flame if you couldn't tell. But thanks so much for watching. Please leave a comment down below so that I don't just ramble on stuff. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, hit me up down there. I will be sure to answer them or at least see them. If they're good comments, I'll probably bring them into a Q&A session. If they're really good comments, I'll probably make its own video, right? There's a lot of topics in the supply chain that I haven't even touched yet, and lots of ideas that I have. So if there's one that's really good, I'll bring it up to a full video. Other than that, please like and subscribe to the video to help the channel grow. Please share with your friends to explain why you're stressed all the time, and why you need so much coffee in your life. But other than that, I hope you have a fantastic day. Thanks so much.